Stop playing with them, ooh.
Hi, I'm Nicola Cairncross. Welcome to my podcast. This is where we talk about entrepreneurship, digital marketing, being a digital nomad, and much, much more. I really hope you enjoy the show. No labels. Do you label yourself? Have others labelled you? Are they positive or negative labels? Are they helpful labels or unhelpful? I've been thinking about labels a lot because just last week I did something so stupid I astonished myself. Again. It's not the first time, I assure you, and it won't be the last. About 12:30 a.m. the other night, the power went off. I don't like the dark generally, but I kept calm and felt my way to my survival cupboard in the dark, dark hallway. I was looking for the candles and matches that I'd been stocking up on, along with other items, in case it all goes Mad Max on us. I managed to carry the first candle I found, a tall, thin dinner candle, back to my even darker kitchen, where I dropped all the matches on the floor before getting the candle lit. As it would not stand up on its own, I went back to the cupboard where I found a couple of safer, shorter, stubbier candles and put one of those in the bathroom and one in the bedroom. Feeling a bit more relaxed because there was now light all around and not a little smug because I was so well prepared, I looked out of the window to see that only my part of town was dark, and weirdly the streetlights were still on. So, not the promised 10 days of darkness yet then, I muttered to myself as I got into bed and turned on my favourite soothing podcast before nodding off, only to be woken by a Disney princess bellowing through the wall at me at about 3 a.m. Yes, you guessed it, I'd left the telly on, and now the power was back, it had turned itself back on, inexplicably tuned to the Disney Channel. Relating this tale to my friend and mentor the next day, he said something that stopped me in my tracks. Doesn't your phone have a torch on it? Surely it does. Duh. It's not the first time he's caught me out either, he's always doing it. This was the person who asked me when I was telling him about the 8 weeks of no internet in Greece, why I hadn't hired a native Greek speaker on Upwork to sort it out for me, especially in light of the fact that I already had an Upwork VA and an Upwork social media manager on the team, both working from the Philippines. It had just never occurred to me, although I had unsuccessfully tried to hire a local Greek teacher to help me out. Mirth has been the immediate reaction of everyone I've told the power cut story to in my family. My daughter is threatening to come round and give me a few basic phone lessons, pointing out that the torch symbol is on the bottom left of my home screen. I've had my phone since around 2018, so I can't believe I've never noticed that. I know my brain works in mysterious ways sometimes, which is why I found it so funny. Incidents like this are not frequent, but do happen regularly. I could give you quite a few more examples, including the one where, in my late teens, I had never realised that buses ran to fairly exact timetables. If only I'd known earlier, I would have saved myself many long freezing hours waiting at Worthing train station, always unsuitably dressed for the weather. If I didn't know I was curious, creative and clever, I might well have seriously labelled myself stupid long ago. That's why I put the word in inverted commas earlier. There are quite a few other labels I could give myself. Number dyslexic, borderline ADHD, maybe a bit of monotropism, which is a person's tendency to focus their attention on a small number of interests at any one time, tending to miss things outside of this attention tunnel, also known as being in flow. In the olden days, I might have been called eccentric. However, I was lucky enough to grow up in an age where they didn't pin labels on children quite so readily, mainly because there was not the same range of drugs to sell to worried parents. I digress. So I've always been just curious, creative and clever. I do slightly daft things sometimes and miss things that may be obvious to others, but these are always balanced out by the amazing things I do. Things like organise and host a fashion show in Brighton, create 160 grand plus revenue from an empty room in Mayfair in under 6 months, give birth, underwater, to 2 healthy babies, bring those babies up to be based human beings, start several 6-figure businesses, buy a 12-bedroom hotel, no money down, renovate and launch it in 12 weeks flat, write 11 books, now 12, survive the sudden death of my partner Steve, learn to live alone in Greece, visit Mexico and El Salvador alone, all too briefly. The labels I've given myself are positive and supportive of my internal picture of me as a kind, brave person, a lifelong learner, a good enough mum, and an enterprising entrepreneur. What labels do you give yourself? What stories do you tell yourself about who you are, what you are, how you function? If some of the labels you have given yourself are not helpful, how could you turn them around, make them positive and more supportive of you as an entrepreneur going forward? Tell me your stories and I'll help you reframe them. It's mindset, not tactics. Are you starting to accept that the rise of artificial intelligence will create a tsunami of redundancies in the UK in the next 5 years? If you've given the subject a second thought and the answer is yes, then there is an elephant in the room question you'll be asking yourself. What are all those people going to do for money and food? While the Davos crowd are suggesting universal basic income as a panacea for poverty, and countries like Canada, Wales, Finland, Spain, and the USA are trialling it already, most rational thinking people know that it will create an even more dystopian future. While putting great swathes of the population on UBI might sound great initially, especially if you're currently working in a bullshit job, as described by David Graeber and discussed in my last blog post, there are several major drawbacks that I can see immediately. The first is, for most people, going to work gives their lives meaning, especially if you are public-facing or in a caregiving job. The very act of getting up to go to work starts a day off right for many people. Going to work gives their days, weeks, months a structure, without which their lives would not work out as well. The UBI payments will also come with a great long list of conditions, many of which will be initially unacceptable, but will, out of desperation, be accepted by many eventually. Think China's social credit system, enforced with 15-minute cities, along with regular medical interventions designed to further cull the expensive herd. Also, it's pretty obvious that in the event of a financial or currency collapse, UBI will be one of the first things to go. Assuming that financial collapse does not happen, and the various governments are able to pay UBI by continuing to borrow from the central banks ad infinitum, these ever-increasing loans, plus compounding interest, will have to be paid back by future taxpayers. Hold on, there won't be any taxpayers. Even if they make UBI taxable income, which seems to defeat the object, the amount raised will never be enough to pay for more and more UBI. Even if the native populations of most Western countries are shrinking fast, leading to unfettered immigration to prop up the GDP, it still won't be enough to cover the UBI of future generations. I'm sure the elites, also known as parasite class, won't want to be taxed heavily to pay for UBI for the poverty-stricken plebs. However, it's not all doom and gloom. Many people are making plans now to provide for their future in the event of their job being swallowed up by a teenager with a clever set of AI prompts. Some are moving to the country and growing food, but some, and I suspect this is a bigger number, are setting up side hustles to turn into full-time income in the future. In order to be successful as a freelancer, solopreneur, or a small business owner, you have to learn some pretty basic principles pretty damn quick. The first of which is that you need to think like an entrepreneur rather than an employee, and that can be tough initially. It won't come naturally, but it can be learned. Becoming an entrepreneur, and especially becoming a better entrepreneur, is not a set of tactics. Those are to a penny. They can be found all over the internet. Millions of books have been written on the topic of starting a business. I've even written one or two myself. No, after more than 25 years of experience, I've realised that becoming an entrepreneur, then striving to become a better entrepreneur, is a state of mind. This is why I'm interviewing successful entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors for my podcast to discover how they think. I'm also interested in the psychological lessons they've had to learn to get where they are today. I did this for my first successful business, the Money Gym, and the interviews I go back to time and time again to recommend to people are the best money tips that those entrepreneurs were either taught or discovered themselves. These are almost more useful than the how-to tactics of how they made their first fortune, interesting though that always is. While my new book, A Better Entrepreneur, is a business memoir, after each chapter I've shared the lessons I've learned along the way. And looking back, those lessons are almost always about my mindset and beliefs, rather than the practicalities of running a business, although there are plenty of tips about that included. So when I market myself informally as the entrepreneur's coach, I must always remember to talk about what people really want, the tactics, tips, and secret keys, along with what they actually need, which is the right mindset, the removal of limiting and negative beliefs, and all the other little mental gremlins that hold budding entrepreneurs back from being as awesome as they could be. Hilariously, the Wales UBI trial was discontinued because of cost. The trial involved paying monthly payments of £1,600 each to a group of 635 care leavers, young people leaving the care system. So how they didn't figure out how much that would cost in advance is beyond me. The idea was to see if the trial saved money in terms of social care, healthcare, and other services, but it wasn't even continued long enough to be able to draw statistically relevant conclusions. Another waste of money. Starting a new business. If you're here, it means you've got that entrepreneurial spark. I'm here to help you fan that flame into a roaring success. To that end, I'm delighted to launch my new free guide, Starting a Business, The Things You Really Need to Know. A quick heads up, if you're expecting a dull, jargon-heavy manual, you might want to put this book back on the shelf. But if you're up for a short, practical guide in turning your business dreams into reality, then buckle up. Let me start by sharing a bit of my own journey. When I was 35, I was in despair. I was expecting my second baby and my husband had just been made redundant. Not his fault, he was very capable indeed, but he worked in the music industry and times were tough. He was older and more experienced with a great track record, but there were a lot of kids coming up behind him who were way cheaper to hire. Previously to that day, in my sunny living room in Kensal Rise, West London, I'd been stuck in a series of dead-end jobs and failed businesses. After Nelson, my second baby, was born, I was forced into applying for secretarial positions which paid a whopping 12 to 14k per year. And even after landing what most would call a dream job, we still couldn't afford to live in London, and I had to move my entire family into my sister's tiny fisherman's cottage in Worthing. The only snag was my sister and her 2 children were still there. Tough times indeed. Everything changed when a book literally fell off the shelf at Books Etc. in Oxford Street and landed in my hands. That book was Swimming with Piranha Makes You Hungry by the brilliant Dr. Colin Turner. I devoured it, I did all the exercises, and I moved on to other game changers like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. These books and hiring a great business coach became my real education because although bright, I left school at 16 with only 3 skills: reading, typing, writing, and the ability to be marketing igloos to Eskimos. Yes, I know that's 4, but hey, I never said I was great at maths. With my coach, a library of great business books, my newfound business knowledge, and a burning desire to change my life, I began my journey towards entrepreneurial success. And you can too. Just check out my new book at nicolacairncross.com/books. And you can get access to Starting a Business the Better Entrepreneur Way for free. I'm going to share with you part 3 of my interview with Andy Shaw, 3 times best-selling author and multi-millionaire property investor. We're on to part 3 now, where he's lost his first fortune and he's trying to find out what's gone wrong with his mind. As he describes it, he had a front row seat at the end of his world. Find out how he coped with all that, how he came back from nothing, and how he got going again with a new business, and how he chose the right business for him that time. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did, and I'll see you next week.
So we ended up going bankrupt. That I was very grateful that I had not built everything in my name solely, because my wife, I built a fair amount in her name as well. Sure enough, virtually every property even she had was in negative equity and that sort of thing. So we had no real money. We just had assets, but all of mine were gone, obviously.
Yeah. I remember the phone call from you, and you said something along the lines of, there's a massive crash coming and it's happening in America. It'll come here and it's going to affect your business badly. But I didn't know what to do either. And if I'd known... It
must have been earlier than that, because we crashed about December. Yeah, so it was... I can't remember. It might have been the year before, because I said, look, this isn't going to be good for anybody with what was coming.
It can't have been the year before, because I think I would have talked to Judith about it if when we did all our big launches at Christmas, the time between Christmas and New Year, absolutely flopped. The year before, I'd sold so many Money Gym annual memberships that I thought I was invincible by then. And then this year we sold nothing, absolutely nothing. And within a month, we had to close the business. I had to give notice on the house. The kids had to go and live with their dad, because we'd had the best year ever the previous year. And I didn't know so much. looking back, I didn't know so much. And of course, you didn't know what I didn't know, and our mentors didn't know what we didn't know. So it's difficult to cover everything, isn't it?
Okay. People could look at it and go, well, that was dreadful, right? I look at it as the most wonderful opportunity of my life, because it was an opportunity to begin again more intelligently. Yeah. You could say I was starting from zero, but I wasn't really. I had my home. We had a foundation. We didn't need a lot. The richest man isn't the man who has the most; it's the man who needs the least. And we didn't need a lot. So it was. Plus, the only thing that happens going through a bankruptcy, if you've structured things reasonably well, is you lose the wealth. You don't lose the mindset. You don't lose the psychology that got you to being a multi-millionaire. People said to me, well, what's going to happen? Because I had all these Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and I lost all of those sort of things. And I said,
only example, my favourite.
And I thought, well, it'll only take me a few years and I'll buy whatever I want again. And everyone went, how can you think like that? You've just lost, and I always say it was 30 million. It was a lot more than that. And how can you think like that? And it's like, well, because I've got the mindset of a multi-millionaire. I will just go out and generate more money and more wealth. It's just what I do. So we went through the hell of that, but it was an experience. It was an experience that, as I said, begin again more intelligently. And, I nearly went straight back into another business and that sort of thing. And fortunately, the guy turned me down. And I was driving home and I thought, thank goodness he turned me down, because otherwise I'd have ended up in yet another business I didn't love. And so I went back and my wife said to me, right, what are you going to do then? Did he want it? I said, no, he didn't. She said, right, where are you going to make money then? I said, I'm not going to make money.
Brutal.
I'm going to sit on my backside for about 3 months and give it some thought and figure out what the hell I'm going to do. That's what I did. I sat there and, I had loads of people still coming to me because I had a big following. And people were still interested in what I had to say. And, and they were asking me to show them how to make money. I said, that's ridiculous. I said, I've just lost more money than most people will ever have in their entire lives. I said, I'm not teaching anyone how to make money. It's ludicrous. And the other thing they were saying to me at the time was, how are you coping so well with this? How can you handle this so well? Because you seem to be like on cloud nine, and you've just had your entire financial world devastated. And I said,
and there was quite a lot of other nasty stuff going along with that, wasn't it? I mean, when you're forced into bankruptcy, a lot of people blame you for things.
Oh, yeah.
You had all sorts of nastiness going on.
We had death threats and we had all sorts of things. People lost money, real people lost real money. It was, they didn't want to blame the banks for anything. They wanted to blame the guy. I don't think I wore Hawaiian shirts then, but they wanted to blame the guy in the Hawaiian shirt sort of thing. Yeah. And so I got a lot of blame. And, people look back at it now and it's like, oh yes, there was this worldwide thing going on. It wasn't just the fact that...
Yeah, because nobody really realised that there was a global financial crisis and a credit squeeze going on all at the same time.
Yeah. I'd say, as far as I'm concerned, it's part of the ebb and flow of life. I lost a hell of a lot more than everybody else added together. But was I doing anything wrong? No, I wasn't doing anything wrong. And, but was didn't mean people didn't lose money. So I looked at it and thought, right, well, I'm never going down that road again. Don't want to get involved with other people. I'll just do it myself. And so it's taught me the lessons of avoiding that sort of potential for the future. And now I live a very, very quiet life. But we had one more little business enterprise before getting to that quiet life. Anyway, I started to write these articles on psychology, mindset, how I was handling it, how I had no fear, why I had no fear, why I wasn't worried, anxious, stressed, depressed, or anything like that. And I just started to write these articles. And as I was writing them, I realized I was writing a book. Then when I mapped out the book same way as I'd mapped it out before, and then all of a sudden I'd realised I'd written 600 pages, and that's when I called you and said, "Got a bit of a problem." I'm about halfway through, and I've written 600 pages.
Yeah,
and you went, "Well, that's too much for one book," and I went, "I know."
Having tried to read your previous book in bed and dropped it on my head several times, I thought, no. Talk him down from this one because it will be unliftable.
Yeah, and it was so anyway, we figured out that there was actually it was a two-part book. One was creating because the problem is people's minds get all screwed up throughout their entire life. And I use this pond analogy where You have all the intellect to do something, but you've got all this bad programming that's messed up the clear water of your mind, and it's turned it into a muddy pond. And so you're then trying to you go to educate yourself on something. Say, I don't know, you want to learn how to trade stocks or something. So you pour that clean, fresh water into your muddy pond. Well, of course, it's instantly polluted because what's going on there. So I created
what's going on in your mind is polluting the information and the education that you're getting.
Yeah. But people don't realise that what they're carrying throughout life, their programming and that sort of thing, is screwing with them. And I didn't realise people, because I had the advantage of when I was just before I went bankrupt, I tried everything to fix the problem, couldn't fix it, and I went from everything I touched turned to gold to everything I touched turned to a real word. Right? Yeah, turned to mud. Let's go with that. And I thought, what's going on here? And I suddenly noticed, and I thought, right, okay, let's think about something really positive. And I realised I couldn't think about anything positive without my mind throwing rocks at me, and it was like, what's going on here? I couldn't hold a single positive, wonderful positive thought in my mind for more than a second, 2 seconds before my mind went, you've got these bills to pay, you've got these people that are upset with, you've got to solve these problems. And I suddenly realised that all the time before, when everything I touched turned to gold, I didn't have any of this noise in my mind. I had no inner ego throwing rocks at me. And then when it started to go wrong, this had come about. And so I realised there was something going on in my mind, and that was causing the problem. So I figured out how to fix it, and I fixed it very, very quickly. And I can honestly say that in the weeks before I went bankrupt, I was at the highest positive moment of my entire life, because I was lifted up in a way that I can only, I don't like talking too much about it on the spiritual level, but it was nothing could faze me. Literally nothing could faze me. And so it was, I had the most wonderful, enlightening experience, and I was able to ride through. I had a front row seat at the end of my world, and it was great. And so everything was good. So I wrote all this, I taught people how to do it or how to fix all these problems. So the first book was all about creating the mindset that enables you to have an empty mind. I called it a bug-free mind, creating a bug-free
mind. Great.
And then it was a case of, right, well, once you've got that, then the entrepreneur bit comes in using a bug-free mind to go and create whatever you want. And that's what I did next. I wrote that book, and that's what I went and created.
Meanwhile, I was wallowing around in a sea of self-pity and confusion. And occasionally we'd get together and I'd say to you, what shall I do? I mean, I just wrote about this literally just last week. I remember we went out for lunch at the pub near you, and I said to you, but what shall I do? What should I do now to definitely make money? And you said to me, I know what I would do, but I know that you probably wouldn't do it. So it's no good me telling you what I would do, because you have to find what you would do. And then I thought, I'll ask him what he would do, and then I'll go and bloody do it, and that will show him. And you told me what you would do, and I realised instantly that I was never going to do that in a million years. It was knocking on the door of every business in Shoreham and offering to do their website and their social media for them. And I thought, can't do that. Simply can't do it. So we were travelling, we were going to things, we were in the car that never locked, do you remember? Because it was such an old, beat-up old thing.
Yeah, I seem to remember that, yeah.
And, but we had really good, long conversations on those drives, and you were incredibly helpful. And you started changing those books. I didn't read them. Right, this is bad, isn't it? I didn't read them you gave me first copies, and I couldn't bear to read them for the first 6 months, because I thought, I was in a really low place looking back on it. And I know now I was in my sister's spare room, not good. And so I didn't read your books for an awful long time. And then I finally got around to picking them up. And I've got using a bug-free mind on my desk right now, because I dip into it every single day nearly. It's so funny being friends with someone who's done something that has changed so many people's lives, because obviously we don't want to puff you up too much. Because your ego's large enough as it is.
Well, what was it you said? You said, I don't believe you could have actually written that.
I did. And the hilarious thing is, it's so good. It's so good. And to know someone who's written a book like that. The other funny thing is, anyone who reads your books who's listened to you and everything, we hear it with your voice. So it's like you're talking to us. It's really funny. But they've sold in 150 odd countries. They've changed people's lives. They've cured people from depression and all sorts of things. And you've got a massive community of people in your membership site still. And then
I don't know. I retired from that a few years ago, so it ticks over. I'm not pushing anything
involved in it. And then what happened then? Well, the books are done brilliantly. So what's happened to you? Because I lost my partner quite suddenly in 2016, and I buggered off to get over that because I wasn't getting over it in Shoreham. And what were you doing in those days
Well, we'd done exceptionally well again with it. We were traveling around the world. I'd set one of my goals was to travel more this time, really go and experience life. But I'd get paid to speak, and so we did a world tour. We did. I can't remember now. It's so many times, so many trips to America every year, and I do occasional major events. You've got your own mastermind going at one point, didn't you? Because we had 8 or 9. Oh yeah, we had we did this. We had all the, I got some amazing testimonials from other personal development authors, and most of the people you would have heard about came to our professional events in Vegas. We'd held an annual event in Vegas, and we ran them for 6 years, I think it was.
Yeah.
We stopped them in 2019 was the last one, fortunately.
Hang on, don't go there yet. So right, I'm just trying to, because I drove across America with you, which was one of my dreams in life. Just before Steve died, I finally got myself back on my feet and my business was flying again, doing Facebook ads for people. And we were going to one event. We were going to a marketers cruise on one side of America, and then we would normally go to this thing in San Diego, and it was usually a month apart, but this time there was a week apart, and you rang me up and said, "Do you fancy driving across America in a Mustang?" And I said, "Okay." So that was an amazing event because we ended up with a convoy of Mustangs, and people were trying to join us up to the last minute, weren't they?
Yeah, it was great.
And then Steve died, which knocked me for 6 again, which is the emotional side of being an entrepreneur for me. My biggest battle is with my emotions, I've realised.
Yeah.
And the only 2 books I took away with me was the Bug Free Mind books. I sold everything in my house. My sister actually sold it out from underneath me, but I wouldn't let her. I got rid of all my other personal development books, but I kept yours. And I read them when I was away, and I got things. I turned myself around again. I really would love not to have to do this anymore. And then 2019, I was really flying high. The business was doing great. I was mentoring people. I had a brilliant marketing system that worked, and I enjoyed. I was living in Greece. And then I went to speak for Neil in Australia. And then you said, why don't you come to the mastermind? And I hadn't felt up to it up until that point, but I went that year, and we had what an event that was. I mean, parties in the desert with camels and fire breathers. And there was just something on every night. It was just an incredible thing. And I do miss those, actually. I might reinvigorate them at some point. They were extraordinary. The people that were there. I mean, that year, Marianne Williamson spoke for you. There was also a guy who played saxophone for Pink Floyd. One of my Greek Taverna owner friends was very impressed with that. And there was just incredible, incredible people there. Marissa Peer was there with her partner, who I knew, who started Jongleurs nightclubs and comedy clubs. I mean, it was just an amazing thing. And then, so I went back, that was May 2019. I went back to Greece, September 2019. My daughter came out, and I suddenly had this yearning to go home. It was almost like a premonition. Nothing felt right in Greece all of a sudden. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross of NicolaCairnX.com. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show today. We've got lots of resources on the website, so do come over to check them out. And by all means, feel free to book yourself into my diary at NicolaCairnX.com/diary. I love to talk to entrepreneurs.